Hi, Andrew Westall.
Hi, Julie Wilson.
It's a pleasure to see you as always.
And you too.
Look at this. I think this is a first edition.
Yes, there
Your
it is.
your wonderful book, The Chimps of Fauna Sanctuary. It's well, you know I'm a fan of this book. We've done a couple of events together, and
You.
and so this is for the 49th shelf in anticipation of your appearance at Word on the Street in Toronto.
Yeah,
And
I can't wait. It's going to be fun.
it's are you like I'm a huge fan of the festival. It's not it's a little different from other. It's not like literary festivals in that I mean there's such a focus on literacy and community. And have you been going for many years?
Yeah, I've been going for a while. I mean, when I was waiting to hear if anyone would buy my first book, I was actually working at a bookstore and I ran their booth at Word on the Street. And it was, I worked there for like 6 months, I think. And it was, Word on the Street was definitely a highlight.
Is it? I think one of the things that I really like it's if you've ever worked at Word on the Street, you'll remember this feeling about feeling a little sort of like trapped inside this booth as you've got like your blinders
Yeah.
on. You can only see this like small cross section of people who just never stop walking by. It's just a
Yeah.
constant flood.
And the whole literary world is out there in the park and you can't go and visit it because you've got to sell books.
Yeah.
That was my experience.
Yeah. So now, appearing as an author, you're going to be, well, they're obviously talking about your book.
Yeah.
So for people who don't actually know about the book, tell us a little bit about the Chimps of Fauna Sanctuary and how you came to write it.
Sure. So about 15 years ago, this really special family of chimpanzees were living in a biomedical laboratory in New York State when their laboratory was shut down. And they were sold on to another biomedical laboratory. But before they could get there, an amazing woman named Gloria Grow rescued these chimpanzees from the laboratory and gave them a new home, kind of like a retirement, on her animal sanctuary just south of Montreal. So they'd been there for about 15 years, and I'd known about them and I'd heard about them for quite a while, and I was sort of casting around for my next book idea. Or actually I was casting around for a magazine article idea, and I started going down the road of getting in contact with Gloria, and then my wife Samantha said, you know, that's not a magazine article, that's your next book. This idea of writing a biography of the chimpanzees, what they've been through, but also, like, because the laboratory was obviously a really difficult experience, it was filled with suffering and what is pretty well close to torture for these animals. Importantly, I wanted to focus on their recovery and the resilience that they showed in the face of what they'd been through. And I figured the best way to do that would be to sort of immerse myself in their world for as long as I could. So I spent 10 weeks living as a volunteer caregiver at the sanctuary, working with the chimpanzees every day in what they call the chimp house. Mm-hmm. And every night in my apartment on the sanctuary grounds, sort of writing up my notes and starting to write the book. So that all happened a couple of years ago, and you held up the first edition, and here is the second edition.
Ooh. It went by so fast.
I know.
All right. Can you tell me about some of your favorite characters, I suppose? I wanted to mention quickly that you do write nonfiction using traditional fictional elements, and I've heard you say that when you read nonfiction, you prefer nonfiction anyhow, that knows what details to put in, what details to leave out, and that you really do want to create something that is a bit of a page turner for the reader. So
Yeah.
you do experience the chimps as sort of like a cast of characters narrated through your experience of them, and we really do have to rely on you and trust you as sort of like a reliable narrator. So can you talk just a little bit about these chimps and how you tried to sort of like personalize them on the page when you were writing?
Yeah, I knew pretty close to the beginning of this that this wasn't going to be my story. That although I was having an incredible adventure, I was going to have to keep my story to a minimum, because I was being presented with 13 life stories that were so incredible and so compelling that I kind of just had to get out of the way of them. And I think that's actually a really valuable lesson that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my career. That, you know, the story has to speak for itself, and if the main, most compelling thrust of the book is simply the author's involvement in it, you may actually be dealing with a story that isn't compelling enough to really hold on to a reader. And, you know, in creative nonfiction, that's usually the case. There's obviously exceptions to that rule, but I think it's a good way of going about things. So, you know, I'm a massive fan of creative nonfiction, this idea of taking true stories and bringing the literary toolkit to them to create a really compelling read and an experience in the page. And I think one of the most important parts of that is making sure you're not delving too deep into or going down too many rabbit holes that the reader's not interested in. And so to avoid that, I tried to summarize as much as I could when I was talking about the research and the background of biomedical research on chimpanzees and the history of our relationship with the chimpanzee. I needed to keep all of that really succinct so that the main compelling parts, which are what these chimps have been through and what their daily lives are like now, could sort of sing off the page. So that was kind of the approach. And, you know, obviously I fell in love with all the chimps, and, you know, it's hard to pick out one or two that I found, you know, that are favorites, but I did spend a heck of a lot of time with Tom, who's sort of the grandfather figure of the chimpanzees. He was the one who all the chimps respected no matter what. He always got to eat first. He also learned how to treat chimpanzees' wounds. So he learned to treat his own wounds, and so they started calling him Dr. Tom. A lot of time with Rachel, who's one of the most psychologically disturbed chimps at Fauna. So all the chimps are variously traumatized, either physically or mentally, psychologically. And Rachel had a lot of trouble staying calm and not injuring herself, which is one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that lab chimps are known to exhibit. So I spent a lot of time with Rachel, and I spent a lot of time with Pepper and Sue Ellen. Pepper has since passed away, sadly, but so, you know, I was building these relationships with the chimps, and as I learned their stories, it wasn't hard to make the decision that their life stories would be the most compelling part.
Right. So, and now here I wanted, that's writing the book, but now you've become quite accustomed to going out and talking about the book. And I mean, having seen you at a number of events, it's really quite amazing what happens to the audience as you talk about your experience and as you talk about the chimps. So as will happen at Word on the Street, obviously you're going to blow a lot of minds, and
hopefully,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like it's a compelling story, but there really is something I do think about the way you tell it. So how is the experience as author who's now almost sort of ambassador in a sense, less activist? How has your own experience of your book changed now that you've had to present it so often to audiences and readers?
Well, the first thing is I'm always trying to keep things fresh for people, because I don't want to keep telling the same stories over and over and over again. And actually what I realized is the stories that I avoided telling originally, sort of in the first few months of promoting the book, the ones that I never really thought about, that I guess in my mind were less compelling than the ones I wanted to tell, they've actually some of them have turned out to be even more compelling in the telling than the ones I originally thought were the most interesting. And it's so fascinating because all I do is listen, right? When I'm on stage or doing a reading, all I'm doing is listening to hear whether or not something is connecting with people. And I've been so amazed at moments where it's really hit home with people. And so when that happens, I kind of, you know, that story will sort of jack itself up the list of the best possible stories to tell.
Right.
The book well, not just the book, like the lives of these chimps in the fauna sanctuary, the founding story of the fauna sanctuary. All of it is so interesting that they're all sort of. I could just talk for hours about them, and they're so. I've told the stories so often that I almost don't have to read them anymore, which I think helps. It's less, I do a lot of readings, but I also try to do some talking where I'm not sort of face down in my book.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I've become an ambassador, but I think people have really learned a lot about the sanctuary through all the events that I've done, and I think that's kind of been my goal all along.
So people, when they come to see you at Word on the Street in Toronto, they will be treated to a taste of this and the tales you've told, and maybe some new ones that you will tell.
Yeah, maybe something from the cutting room floor. Who knows? Maybe something that didn't even make it into the book.
Ooh, perfect.
Ooh.
Was that a chimp ooh?
Ooh, no, that was a human ooh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you to do the chimp ooh.
Not here.
Okay, but at Word on the Street you might do an ooh.
Who knows?
We'll see.
Who knows?
Andrew Westoll, thank you so much. I'm going to hold up the first edition. You hold up the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie.
We'll block each other out. Woo!
Woo!
All right, take care. Thanks for talking.
Okay, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.